Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides, the podcast where we speak to the locals to learn what the experience is like for travellers during the low season months in their destination. I'm Ged Brown, your host for this week's episode, and today we return to Northern Thailand, where Nikki Morrison has been on location near the Myanmar border. As regular listeners will know, we've been working with Nikki Morrison as she travels the world during the low seasons to help low season traveller in our mission to draw more attention to the challenges of overtourism and seasonality whilst extolling the virtues of low season travel. Nikki met up with Sarah Blaine whilst on her journey through Northern Thailand recently to learn more about her work with the elephant Mahouts. The Elephant Mahouts Foundation is a unique organisation in Thailand working to rewild captive elephants and allow them to return to the cloud forest along the northern Myanmar border. It's only possible with the support of the elephant owners and Mahouts, who in the past have sold elephants into the tourist trade. Tourism is still vital to the success of this project, and by visiting the village as a guest of the Karan tribes who live there, you both help to sustain a way of life and liberate elephants who have lived captive lives, in some cases for decades. The woman behind the idea is Sarah Blaine, and she invited Nikki to experience it for herself as part of her low season adventure. Enjoy.
So I'm just going to ask you to start with to just describe where we're sitting at the moment, because it's a world-class view and we're in a most remarkable location. Go for it.
We're sat at our life project in Northern Thailand, and we're sat in our guest lodge, which is a beautiful spot at the very, very top of the village where our project is located, overlooking the hills here and the forests. And it really is a peaceful, beautiful spot for guests to come and relax.
So we're in the village of Kopardo. Give us a sense of what the village consists of and where it is, because it's 35 kilometres from the nearest town, am I right in saying?
Yeah, so we have small towns at the very bottom of the mountain. We're located at the very top where the forests are kind of wrapping around the village. It's a Karan indigenous community here, and the village is nestled underneath the Golden Temple at the top of the mountain. The closest city to here is Mahouts, and that's where our guests come into, and we pick them up from and drop them back there. And the village is around 30 houses and close to around 300 people living in the village now of multi-generations, all ages here.
And the village and the Mahouts and the Elephant Project are completely meshed together. One can't exist without the other. Tell us what you're doing with the elephants.
So the idea is that we prevent elephants from having to leave this vast, beautiful forest habitat and leaving to go to the cities to work in elephant tourism and all that, the shapes and forms that comes in. So the idea is that the elephants can stay living in this beautiful forest habitat. They can roam freely, foraging for 100% of their own diet, living in their own family social groups, and be undisturbed really by humans as much as possible.
But we need to be clear, these are not wild elephants in the purest sense of being wild. These are elephants who have had a life in captivity. They have a different status in Thailand, don't they?
Yes, so our elephants are captive elephants, and that's very different to wild elephants. So wild elephants have not really had contact with humans. They haven't had any form of training. They're living wild. So we do have wild elephants in the area, and they migrate here from the national parks at certain times of the year. Our elephants are captive, so they've essentially been born into a captive situation. So their mum is a captive elephant. Sometimes here the fathers are wild elephants, but what happens is when at birth they're all registered, so there's a very tight database of the captive population of elephants in Thailand, and they're part of that. So they're all microchipped, they have blood taken for DNA, which is a great thing to check that the mother is really the mother and they're not part of the illegal trade. So that's a really good thing, and they're part of a vet scheme with the Elephant Hospital, and the vets come up here every year and check their health, check their microchip, So, we can enable them through the project here and the skill of the owners and Mahouts up here to live as freely as possible. And, the life they have, they are interacting with wild elephants. So there's a real crossover there. Their life is they're able to live out in these forests and still live amongst wild elephants. So
I've got so many questions to go to next. Let's start with the changes that you see in the elephants when they're brought into the project here, who've been living in more traditional captivity.
Yeah, so we have a male elephant called Yaboo, and he was living a very captive life before as a tourist elephant in a very confined space, being hand-fed all of his food by humans, so thrown at his feet, and then he would eat it with no choice involved in that. And he's transitioned to life here over the past 3 years, and you can see the change in his whole body language. He's the way he moves around the forest. He's not stiff waiting for food to be delivered anymore. He's now just, out there knocking trees down, knocking banana plants are his favourite, and he just sort of bulldozes his way through this endless buffet of food, which is, the love of his life.
That wasn't his instinct straight away when he came to the jungle. You had to reintroduce him to the forest here.
Yeah, he kind of stood around a lot for a long time waiting to be fed because that's what he was used to doing. So it's a very slow transitional process of having him near to the village to start with, where we could keep a very close eye on him, still giving him food, but lessening that and then sort of letting him help to get access that food, and then we would move him further out into the forest, and then out in the forest the Mahouts would chop down for him and put he pulled some down, and once he knew he was allowed to just smash down anything he wanted to eat, and remembering those skills he may have had when he was younger of preparing that food, just not just sourcing it but the preparation of it, stripping the banana leaves to get the right inside bit that he wants to eat, stripping off those big leaves, so all of that. But he's now doing it and eating. He forages for 100% of his diet all year round.
No supplements for any of your elephants here at all. They entirely live as nature intended.
Totally, 100% all year round. We don't supplement feed at all. We don't need to.
And this sort of in-between state they have of being kind of, I know that you've talked about rewilded elephants, semi-wild elephants. They've got this incredible freedom in a 900,000 acres. Did you say the forest is? It's estimated to be around 100,000 acres. Sorry, that was me rather exaggerating.
But there's certain areas they can't go. So it's obviously there's farmland with different communities here. There's some other protected forests, so it's community forest that they're allowed in. It's like a sacred protected forest, but it's vast. I don't know the exact acreage, but it runs into thousands of acres.
And this unique state they have offers an amazing opportunity for people who are interested in Asian elephants, because what I hadn't realised is that there is no knowledge of how wild Asian elephants live, that no one's really studying it or able to study it. I mean, I was really shocked by that.
It's limited. There is some now out there, but it's very, very hard to study wild Asian elephants because of the dense habitat they live in, and you've seen that today.
I couldn't believe that 3 tons of animal can be invisible. Yeah, and I don't suppose we tend to think about African elephants and savannas and pushing through sort of scrublands to be maybe 50 feet from a herd of semi-wild elephants and not be able to see them or hear them until something crashes down in the wood is amazing. So yeah, it does make sense that they're just not easy to get close to.
Yeah, it's too dangerous. Their
reputation for being docile is rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, the elephants are unpredictable. They have moods like humans do, and they can be very dangerous animals that can lead to deaths in people. So it's not sensible to go looking for wild elephants and following them and being in their dense habitat where they're completely comfortable and we're not. So it's very difficult to study them in the wild in that type of habitat. There are other groups doing research now on Asian elephants, and we're one of those projects that are, we have a really good research program running that's been running for many years, looking at all kinds of behaviours of the elephants. So we look at that foraging behaviour. What are they eating? Foraging is a complex behaviour, so we look at the sourcing of the food, the preparation, the social activity that goes into all of that, the hundreds of different plants and herbs and bark that they'll eat. So studying that is a huge project in itself. We look at elephant vocalizations, so all of those communications they're making. We have special listening in equipment that we can listen to all the sounds that we can hear, which are, trumpets, squeaks, rumbles, all kinds of sounds, and then infrasound as well, which is the sounds that we can't hear. So we can tap into all of that, and that's a long study. We look at their social structures, their relationships with their mahouts. So all of those, behaviours that we study over years and years and years, and then eventually manage to publish papers.
So it's a unique project going on in that respect, and giving this important bridge between the wild elephants and the elephants that you can actually see and observe and start to learn something about. This is a small project. Where do you see it going? Is it replicable, or do you just expand, or how does that work?
The idea is that it is replicable, and not only in Thailand but other Asian range countries where there are elephants. This project works best in these very large forests, working with communities that already live and manage these forests and have their elephants living here. We're in talks with other communities, and the idea is that we can hope to get more elephants back to this project, and then to start new projects working wherever there are elephants and communities.
And we haven't talked about the community side very much, but that is really, really important, isn't it? Now, explain a little bit about how a mahout works with an elephant, and how the mahouts are kind of part of their villages, and where all that relationship sits in relationship to what you're doing here.
So this is an elephant sort of keeping community, and people here have coexisted with wild and captive elephants for generations. So the knowledge of the mahout is in the blood of these families, and they learn that skill, traditionally from when they're little boys. The men here are mahouts, not the women in Karan culture. And there's ownership of the elephants here, and mahouts will go out and care for these elephants in the forest habitat here, which they're caregivers for them. With our group of girls, they roam freely around here, so they need minimal checking from the mahouts, so they'll go out and check on them every few days. But we've introduced a guest program where we take guests out to see the elephants living like this, and that's really important, that people learn to just stand back from a safe and respectful distance to the elephants and have a more safari style experience with them. And the mahouts obviously then have to take care of our guests while they're out there, make sure everybody's a good distance, make sure safety is always our top priority.
So it's a completely different model to how... So originally elephants had been working in logging, and then that was outlawed in the late 1980s. And that's when a lot of elephants and mahouts were forced into tourism and parks, basically, because that was the only way that they could survive. And you've had to come along with a new model and persuade them that this is viable and commercially viable. Well, how did you go about getting them on side for that? Because presumably it's cheaper and easier for them to sell an elephant off, not into the circus, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversations go on. It takes time and a lot of kind of discussions to fully understand each other. This is a partnership, and it has to involve the whole community, and we have to understand each other and reach compromises if there are differences of opinion. So you have to form and build that relationship, and that takes time. It's a good year of talking to a community before you start anything, because you have to really understand each other. So I think the big thing for them is that this is yes, they get a lot of money from selling a baby elephant. And, I understand that when you're in a region of poverty, to have that kind of money coming in is a big pull for people. But what a lot of the villagers came to understand is that this project, is here for their children, their grandchildren. It provides income to everybody in the community. Everybody can get involved. It means that their children are supported to have education. We're bringing in people that can help to teach them English, which is a great skill. They're learning hospitality skills. They're learning all kinds of things, and there are jobs here for people, So this is a really ethical project that runs way into the future, that's protective of their culture. It's protecting everybody here, really. They know they know what happens when all of the elephants leave. The forest becomes very vulnerable to cash crops, and they don't want that here. They want their forest protected, and those captive elephants living in this forest helps to protect it. And if the business model, we're obviously a charity, but that business model has to be successful to them. They have to see success and benefit of that, not just in monetary terms, but in guests coming here, and for all of those other reasons of bringing new skills, bringing English skills here.
Yeah, opening up the culture to other things, but preserving the culture at the same time.
Yeah, definitely, which is very important.
So tourism is at the heart of this. As a tourist, what part do people play when they come here?
So everybody leaves their footprint here when they come, which is lovely. And we were talking about this last night with the guys, that everybody in the village remembers everybody that's ever been here. And they'll always talk about, oh, do you remember so-and-so with the red hair and that coloured hat? They fell over by that tree in the forest. So we have wonderful moments with everybody. So as a guest, I think, what we encourage people to do is to just come with an open mind and open heart, immerse into the community. You can stay up at the guest lodge, which gives a bit more privacy, or you can stay in a homestay with a family in the village.
Yes.
And people
which is total immersion. I mean, that really is like a B&B, really, isn't it?
Yeah. If people stay at the guest lodge, they still go down and have all of their meals with a host family, so they still get that sort of family environment.
And I can vouch for the quality of the food, and the food miles is about, well, we're talking meters really, because whilst we're foraging with the elephants, the Mahouts are foraging for our supper. Dinner. Yeah,
exactly. So just full immersion, more of a cultural exchange we like, because we always remind people that the community here are as interested in people that visit as they are in them. So that should be a really good exchange going on of learning about each other. And I think we do that very well here. I think that works.
There's definitely no sense of that kind of human zoo thing, because you are very much so immersed in, they've got the upper hand, they've got the majority, you're the minority within their space, and they can kind of, they're incredibly generous and very kind in how they host, but also, if they want to have a laugh at you, they can have a laugh at you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But they love having people here. They're so welcoming, and that's a genuine feeling from them, emotion. They really like to sit at dinner and talk to people and learn and understand where we come from and what our countries look like, and do we do similar things to them in our countries,
Yeah. So you have that opportunity, you sort of meet people, you sit in this most fantastic location, you're out walking with the elephants, getting close to but not having direct contact with them, and starting to understand. I mean, I haven't really seen an elephant behave like that in my life, I don't think. I kind of was surprised by how agile they were, how determined they were, how they are just machines for eating and constantly picking and moving, and how animated they are. I think a lot of people don't recognise an unhappy elephant. We don't have the knowledge to understand what we're seeing when we visit places that we think are more ethical, and probably are more ethical than things were in the past. But how would you advise people to go about their elephant tourism in Thailand in the best possible way?
I think the key thing is to research as much as possible before you come. So there's a lot online now available about what to look for. It is hard, but I think, you know, you can look at the setting. If it's very close to a city, you know, there's no natural habitat there. So, you know, the elephants are being fed by humans because there's nothing else to eat there. If they're standing on concrete, that's really not good for elephants' feet at all. So that's a very bad sign. If they're kept in tiny little pens on very short chains, those things. And in behaviour, a lot of elephants in miserable situations will stand very, very still, not moving, with a trunk on the floor or a trunk resting on something. They don't really move. Or they exhibit stereotypical behaviour, which is sort of frantic moving, which is a coping mechanism for the stress they're under, which is a lot of this head swaying and head bobbing. And lots of places will know the tourists question that behaviour, but will maybe tell people that they're dancing or they're happy, or, you know, there's often a story alongside these things. I think you've seen that our elephants here are very naturally moving all the time.
Oh, they're busy. They're
So,
super
but it's
busy.
fluid motion. So,
Yeah.
you know, the ears are flapping constantly, the tails are swishing, their trunks are out like this all the time. You know, they're looking for the next treat. And this morning we saw an amazing behaviour of, you know, vigilance of them knowing something else was in the forest. So we spotted the ears coming out and listening, standing still and listening, and then all the trunks were coming out, and you know, we knew something was there, and there were buffalo in the forest that they don't like. So, you know, that's a very we should see vigilance. You know, we should see that vigilance in their surroundings of like
they're stimulated, their brains are
what's out
working,
there,
they're interacting with their environment, and their environment is all the better for having them in it, isn't it? As well?
Totally, yeah.
The last thing we should probably talk about is being here in the low season. I know that this place was almost unreachable until they built the road 5 years ago. It's been beautiful and temperate. It's been about 24 degrees during the day, hasn't it? We've had a little bit of rain, but not a huge amount. What are the advantages of coming here in low season, do you think, in the rainy season as it is for Thailand?
Yeah, I mean, I always say to people inquiring, you know, if they want to come during rainy season, and we host a month-long student group at that time of year, and I love rainy season. You know, the forest is great fun. It's all muddy, and everything's so green and lush. The temperatures are lovely. You get a mix of dramatic weather here, so, you know, because we're up in cloud forest, so you get beautiful clouds and mist circulating around, and then the sun comes out, and it's incredible. So I like the weather. The elephants love it. You know, they like plenty of streams full for splashing over and drinking, and mud all around them and stuff. So I feel like it's a happy time. It's
And you were saying as well, because of the wild elephant who come across, they're not here in rainy season, so it's safer. You're more likely to be allowed to go out because, although we haven't talked about this element, you have groups of scouts going ahead, security teams, to make sure that there aren't wild elephants in the forest when you've got your visitors here to go out and observe the semi-wild elephants.
Yeah.
And at the moment, you think you've got one wild elephant?
Yes, we've got one wild.
He didn't go home for the
He
rainy
decided
season.
not to go home. No, so
gone
most
for a
of them
good
come in
thing.
dry season, and then they head back to the national parks in rainy season. But he's stayed around this year, and he's. We knew he's been around our area today, so we always have a security team that go out checking first. So they'll check for fresh footprints from wild bulls, and these people are experts in spotting and tracking, and then they kind of, you don't see them in the forest, right? They just sort of circle us while we're out there, just checking, keeping us safe. So it's all very, very safe. And he was around today, and what I've just found out since I've come back is he's following our Mokiju, our female, around. He's just enjoying hanging out with her at the moment, and has chosen to stick around through rainy season.
Which is another natural behaviour that you get to observe and see where that leads in future.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's been an amazing few days here, and totally immersive, totally restful, and totally educational. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And you can learn more about Chiang Mai and what it's like during its low season months on lowseasontraveller.com. But that's our show for this week. Thanks as always for your company. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please do leave us a positive rating and a review on your podcast app. It really does help. And also, please do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn so you'll be the first to hear our latest low season stories, articles, and guides. Have a great week wherever you are, and remember that travel is always better and fairer for the planet, the local communities, and you, the travellers, when it's without the crowds.